Hello. Now we're going to focus on the craft of charting itself, the habits that make documentation accurate, legal, and useful. We're going to cover three things. First, the 6 C's of charting, which are 6 simple rules for good documentation, and we'll look at an example of each so you can see what it means in practice. Second, how to correct an error, first in a paper chart and then in the electronic record, because the steps are different and getting them wrong can create legal problems. Third, we'll end by clearing up a distinction that confuses almost everyone, the difference between the EMR and the EHR. Keep your guided notes open. You will fill in the 6 C's, practice the correction steps, and compare the EMR and EHR, and you'll upload your notes to Brightspace for credit. Let's get started. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to do 5 things. First, name the 6 C's of charting and give an example of each, because knowing the name is not enough. You have to say it in your own words. Second, correct an error in a paper record using the proper steps, which are very specific. Third, explain how correcting the EMR differs from correcting paper because you do not handle them in the same way. Fourth, describe the audit trail, which is the feature that makes electronic corrections trustworthy. And fifth, explain the difference between an EMR and an EHR, two terms people use interchangeably, even though they're not quite the same thing. These build on each other, so let's start with the foundation, the 6 C's of charting. Here are the 6 C's at a glance, and a handy thing is, well, they all start with the letter C, which makes it pretty easy to remember. They are the client's words, clarity, completeness, conciseness, chronological order, and confidentiality. Think of them as a checklist you run in your head every time you document. Client's words means capturing what the patient actually said. Clarity means anyone can understand it. Completeness means nothing important is left out. Conciseness means it's brief and to the point. Chronological order means everything is dated and timed in sequence. And confidentiality means the information is protected. Over the next couple of slides, we'll take them three at a time and look at concrete examples of each so you can see exactly what good charting looks like. Here are the first 3 C's with an example of each. The first is client's words. You record the patient's own words in quotation marks and you do not rephrase or summarize them. Here's why that matters. If a patient says it feels like my chest is being squeezed, that exact phrasing is a clue that helps the provider and it could point toward a cardiac problem. If you shorten it to patient has chest pain, you have thrown away useful information. So chart the exact quote. The second is clarity. Use precise descriptions and accepted medical terminology so that anyone with medical training can read your note and understand it. Instead of small cut on the arm, write a 2 centimeter laceration on the left forearm. Notice it is specific about size and location. The third is completeness. Fill out every required field and include all relevant information. If you take vital signs, record the whole set, the blood pressure, heart rate, respiratory rate, temperature, oxygen saturation, and pain score, not just the one number you happen to notice. An incomplete note can lead to incomplete care. Let's move on to the next 3 C's. Here are the final 3 C's. The fourth is conciseness. Be brief and to the point. Charting does not need to be wordy. In fact, a shorter note is easier to scan in a hurry. Using approved abbreviations saves time and space as long as everyone in the office uses the same ones. For example, patient afebrile denies pain says a lot in 3 words. The fifth is chronological order. Date and time every entry and record events in the order they actually happened. If vitals were taken at 9 o'clock and a medication was given at 9:15, each gets its own timed entry and sequence. This matters enormously for patient care and for legal defense because the timeline tells the story of what happened and when. The sixth is confidentiality. Share information only with authorized staff and keep it protected at all times. That means do not leave a chart open on a screen where others can see it, and never discuss a patient where you could be overheard, like in the waiting room or the elevator. Confidentiality is not just good manners, it's the law under HIPAA. So those were the 6 C's. Now we turn to fixing mistakes, starting with paper charting. Everyone makes mistakes in a chart at some point, so the question is how you fix one correctly. Let's start with paper charts. The correct steps are specific, so memorize them. First, draw a single line through the error, just one line, so the original entry is still readable underneath. Second, write the correct information nearby or on the next line. Third, and this is the part people forget, add your initials, the date, and the time of correction. Fourth, if your office requires it, note a brief reason, such as wrong patient or wrong chart. And fifth, if you are adding information after the fact, label it clearly as a late entry or an addendum with the current date and time. Now the bottom of the slide, the things you must never do. Never erase an entry. Never scribble it out or black it out. Never use correction fluid or whiteout. So why do we have all these rules? Because the medical record is a legal document. If a chart shows signs that something was hidden or obliterated, it looks like someone was concealing a mistake, and that can destroy the record's credibility in court. The single line keeps everything honest. The original error and the correction are both visible. So let's see how this works on the electronic record. Now the electronic record, or the EMR. The goal is the same as paper. Keep both the original and the correction visible and honest, but the method is different because the software does the work. First, you cannot truly erase anything. The system keeps the original entry no matter what. Second, instead of typing over the original, you make a formal addendum or an amendment, which the system records as a separate dated change. Third, every change is stamped automatically with your electronic signature, the date, and the time, so there is no question who did it. Fourth, when you are correcting something, the incorrect content is usually removed from the main view so it does not confuse anyone, but it stays in the system and can be retrieved. And fifth, only authorized users logged in with their own credentials are allowed to make changes. The key feature that makes all of this trustworthy is on the right, the audit trail. The EMR automatically logs who made each change, what was changed, when, and from which workstation. That audit trail is the electronic equivalent of your handwritten initials and date on paper, except the computer does it for you and it cannot be skipped. So on paper, you draw a line and initial. In the EMR, you make an addendum and the audit trail records it. Let's put the two side by side. Here is the side by side because the contrast is easiest way to remember it. Read it row by row. How you fix it. On paper, you draw one line through the error and write the correction nearby. In the EMR, you enter a formal addendum or amendment and you never type over the original. The original entry. On paper, it stays visible and legible under that single line. In the EMR, it is retained in the system and tracked by the audit trail. Who and when? On paper, you supply your handwritten initials, date, and time. In the EMR, the electronic signature and audit trail do that automatically. And the never row. On paper, never erase, black out, or use correction fluid. In the EMR, never delete or overwrite the original. Notice the pattern across the whole table. The goal is identical in both columns. Keep the original and the correction both identifiable and know who changed what and when. Only the method differs. By hand on paper, automatically in the EMR. If you remember that one idea, you will handle corrections correctly in either system. Let's move on to our last topic for this lecture and settle the difference of EMR versus EHR. Okay, so what really is the difference between an EMR and an EHR? People use the terms interchangeably, but there's a real difference, and the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT is precise about it. An EMR, an electronic medical record, is a digital version of the paper chart within one practice. It is used by that office's own clinicians for diagnosis and treatment, and the key limitation is that the information does not travel easily outside that practice. In that sense, an EMR is not much better than a paper chart when it comes to sharing. The record might even have to be printed and mailed to a specialist. But an EHR, an electronic health record, is built from the ground up to be able to be shared. It holds information from all the clinicians involved in a patient's care, and authorized providers in different organizations can access it. It follows the patient rather than staying locked to one office, and the shareability, called interoperability, is the whole point. Here's the memory trick at the bottom. The M in EMR stands for medical, one practice's chart, while the H in EHR stands for health, the whole patient, shared across providers. One letter, but as the ONC puts it, a world of difference. Let's finish off by summarizing everything from this lecture. Let's pull it all together with 5 takeaways. 1. The 6 C's of charting are client's words, clarity, completeness, conciseness, chronological order, and confidentiality. Run that checklist every time you document. 2. To fix an error in a paper record, draw a single line through it and add your initials, the date, the time, and never erase, black out, or use correction fluid. 3. In the EMR, you do not type over anything. You make an addendum or an amendment. The original is always kept, and the audit trail automatically records who changed what and when. 4. Notice that paper and the EMR share the very same goal, to keep both the original entry and the correction identifiable, even though the method differs. And 5, an EMR is one practice's digital chart used mostly within that office, while an EHR is built to be shared across providers and follows the patient through their whole health journey. Master these and your documentation will be accurate, honest, and legally sound. Complete your guided notes in the self-check and upload them to Brightspace for grading. Here are the resources I used to put this lecture together. Feel free to pull any of them up to look more deeply into the lecture topics.